And we are live. I'm hitting the record button here now, Evan, for you. All right, we are live. It's Dr. J here in the house. I am back off of my maternity leave for a week. I had my second son named Hudson Lee Marcagiani. He is doing great, 6 pounds, 3 ounces, super healthy, feeding great. Got a great, powerful suck. My last son didn't quite have that good suck because he was born 2 weeks earlier. So he's doing phenomenal, great breast milk supply on my wife's side, feeding, napping, routine, everything's great. So we are very blessed, very fortunate. And thanks for all the well wishes. But Evan, it's been real, man. It's been 2 weeks. How you been, man?
Hey man, congratulations. I've been great. I've just been kind of sitting by the wayside waiting to see your pictures and hear everything's good. So I'm glad it all turned out.
Yeah, everything's really turned out great. Really appreciate it. So, and now you got two girls, I got two boys. So we got like the perfect tandem.
I know it's a trip, yin and yang.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we talked about pre-show about seasonal depression, right? This is actually Labor Day. Yes, we work on Labor Day. And that's kind of the signifying of the end of summer. So fall starting to come in. Then when the seasons change, especially as it starts going from less sunlight or more sunlight to less, some people can deal with depression. And we're going to kind of break down, what that looks like, causes, solutions, getting to the root cause, what you can do about it so you can have great mood all year round. So why don't we dive in then?
Yeah, so I'll share my story with seasonal depression. I used to work third shift to pay for my college. I was working like midnight, usually around anywhere between 11 p.m. and midnight as a starting time, and I would get off at 5 a.m. So by the
Right.
time I'm trying to go to bed, the sun is coming up. It was just absolutely terrible. And the only way that I think I survived it, to be honest with you, was
Mm-hmm.
using light therapy boxes. And so, obviously, the sunshine is the best, and you're never going to beat natural sunlight exposure in your naked eyeballs without sunglasses on. But in my situation, I was using a light therapy box at night before I would go in. So I would use it around 11 p.m. for about 30 minutes. I'd sit next to this light therapy box. This is basically just like a sun in a box. Now, it's not anywhere as close to bright, but you can get them around 10,000 lux, LUX, which is a measurement of brightness. The sun on a sunny, cloudless day, you're getting like 100,000 lux. It's just extreme levels of brightness. A cloudy day, 10,000 lux to 15,000 lux, something like that. So this box is trying to replicate at least the brightness of a cloudy day, and that would help to set the circadian rhythm. I was basically trying to trick my body and tell my brain to wake up at midnight and go to bed at 5 a.m., which is not natural and not optimal. But that's how I learned about light therapy and seasonal depression. And then ultimately, the goal would be people who are working night shift, get them off night shift. It's just not the way you're supposed to live.
Exactly. The shift work or night shift work is actually considered to be a non-substance, one of the only non-substance carcinogens that can increase risk of cancer in the same category as asbestos and smoking. So definitely not a good thing. It can affect your body healing, recovering, all those good things. Obviously, between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., you're recycling and turning over a lot of your brain chemicals and neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA. So it's really important. If we don't have that good sleep, you're not going to be able to turn over your brain chemicals optimally.
Yeah, well said. So depression could happen just based on having a bad shift. Insulin as well. I mean, I noticed that there was a ton of overweight people that worked night shift. If you just look up like diabetes night shift or insulin night shift, you can see, well, duh, you're not supposed to be up at night, but there can be some issues changing with your leptin and ghrelin and insulin and some of these hunger, satiety, and blood sugar regulation hormones. So, if you type in night shift nurses cancer, you could read about that. There was a popular study done on female nurses and the
Yep.
incidence of breast cancer in night shift. And I believe it was like around a 50% higher incidence of breast cancer of nurses at night versus daytime nurses.
Yeah, definitely not worth the shift differential you get, the little bit ink bump in pay to work night. Definitely not worth it. I always
No.
tell patients if you're on the fence with that, try to have that normal day shift. It's going to be much, much better for your health. So, in general, when we look at depression, right, seasonal changes can make a difference. We know that just sunlight and healthy levels of cholesterol have a major effect on serotonin and serotonin receptor sites. So we know cholesterol is synthesized via sunlight on the skin, and you can get this pre-form of vitamin D3 that can make its way into the body, and that can have a major effect upregulating mood and serotonin. We know there's a natural circadian rhythm. So cortisol gets kind of emphasized during the day based on lights, right? Light and dark hormonal rhythms. And the hormones during the day are really emphasized and accentuated by light. So healthy light stimulation can really help your cortisol rhythm. And then the light dropping out at night can really help emphasize melatonin rising, which is a powerful antioxidant. And it's also a powerful, it's going to help you sleep throughout the night and help you regenerate and heal. And melatonin is made from serotonin. So serotonin is that feel good neurotransmitter. So the same chemicals that allow you to feel good are the same chemicals that allow you to sleep. So I'm a firm believer in the fact that there's a connection between seasonal affective disorder and the season changes and also sleep. So if we can make sure that one, we're getting some light exposure during the day, and two, we're de-emphasizing light at night. We're emphasizing darkness at night, maybe blue blocking glasses, get dimmer switches on the core rooms you're going to be in at night, so you can drop the intensity of light in those rooms down 80%. Those are going to be great strategies to accentuate melatonin production so you can sleep better, and that better sleeping will help your natural circadian rhythm, and that circadian rhythm of lower cortisol at night, higher melatonin at night, higher cortisol in the morning, getting that good rhythm will spill over and affect your mood, especially during the transition into summer and fall.
Yeah, it's crazy we have to have this conversation, but with the invention of electricity and light bulbs, we've taken a very natural, well-regulated rhythm and thrown it out of rhythm. I mean, you just look at some of the indigenous people now. Let's just, take some indigenous person in the Amazon rainforest. They don't have any screens. They're getting 100% natural light during the day, tons and tons of lux, just insane levels of brightness. The body knows, hey, it's daytime, let's wake up. Versus you take the person in the morning who has their blinds halfway open in their house, it's dim in their bedroom, they're kind of, you know, tiptoeing over to the coffee machine, and then they get in their car and they put their sunglasses on. Normally sunglasses are about an 18% lens, meaning 78% or more is going to be blocked. So like a Ray-Ban, for example, sunglasses, they're typically 18% lens. So if you look at like a car's window tint, 20% means only 20% of light gets in. So 18% means 18% of that sunlight's coming into your eyeballs. And then you go into your office and you sit under fake lighting, and maybe you're lucky and have a window, or maybe you don't. I've taken measurements when I used to work in an office setting, and I was only getting around 750 lux. I mean, that is just dark. So your brain, the whole hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, this whole thing helps. It's generated by light. So when you're sitting there in a dark office or a dimly lit office under fake lighting, you really don't ever get the signal that it's daytime. So these people, including me, would have these midday crashes of just cortisol, but you could measure it too with saliva, but you would just feel it, right? You'd get tired, and then you're thinking, oh, I need a snack, and then you eat something to try to perk yourself up. But it's not it wasn't a lack of food that was causing that midday fatigue. It was a lack of sunlight. So the only way I was able to like maintain my sanity was in the middle of the day, take my shirt off on my lunch break and go out and just find a field behind the office and sit in the field bare feet with my shirt off and just trying to act like a solar panel and absorb as much sun as I could. That was the only way I could do it. Luckily now I'm in between calls. I'll just jump out my window and run outside and get a few minutes of sunlight and then come back in.
That's smart. I think it's really important, especially this time of the year. Sun may not quite be as intense. So now you may need to get out there midday, or maybe in the summer it was a little too intense. So, it's a good time to actually go out more during the midday, especially as fall transitions, because, the axis tilts a little bit. We're a little bit further away from the sun this time of year. So the sun's rays are a little bit less intense. So that's important.
Yeah. There's an app called D-Minder, like vitamin D-Minder you can get, where it'll tell you your vitamin D window. So people think, oh, just because the sun's up, I can get vitamin D. No, you really can't, especially in the wintertime. I mean, you're literally like 30 minutes. Like I know in Kentucky, and you're higher north latitude than me. So when your winter comes, it's going to be like 20 minutes or something crazy in the middle of the day, from like 12 to 12:20 p.m. That's it. So if you're super high north, like New York level latitude, there are parts of the day. Well, there are weeks at a time where you literally can't make vitamin D, regardless of whether the sun was out, just because the angle of the earth is tilted so far away from the sun that the rays get scattered too much and you can't make vitamin D. Versus if you're at the equator, you can make vitamin D year round, and there's no change in seasonal daylight or nighttime. You have 12 hours a day and 12 hours a night at the equator year round, which is pretty cool.
Correct. So big strategy number one is really accentuate light during the prime time, the middle part of the day. You can get 15, 20 minutes and expose yourself to some sun at night or at lunchtime. That's great. Number two, really utilizing blue blocking glasses is fine at nighttime. Like some people, like I can do pretty good even looking at my screen right up before bed. It doesn't affect me at all, winding down or relaxing. But I do feel like I can definitely go into parasympathetic a little bit faster. So, I'm still really good. Like it's not a huge noticeable thing. I'll find if I have blue blocking glasses on, I will literally be like falling asleep while watching a show or on my phone. So it's just like, it's almost like if I don't have, sometimes I'll have to take the blue blocking glasses off because I'm just falling asleep so easily. And so some people, they get overly stimulated and it really winds them up. So you kind of have to feel it out. The healthier your nervous system, the more you can adapt to it. If it's affecting your sleep, winding down, relaxing, then go with the blue blocking glasses at night. But do your best to create a really good environment. Lights on, dimmer switches, keep that at least down. You can at least get, like, on my phone, I have a blue light app on there, so it kills it. And then I have it set up here in my iPhone where if I tap it 3 times, boom, 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 it goes pure red.
Nice.
Pure red. So then I'll use this as like a night light at night, like walking up to my bedroom, getting ready, and I'll just kind of use that. Or if in my son's room, I have to go in there or put him down or read a book, I'll use this as a night light, which is pure red light. So there's no blue coming out of there at all. I have it on night shift all the time. So there's actually a significant reduction in blue light on this phone. So those are some good strategies with your tech. So you can at least get blue light reduced. And then you can also do the setting where you knock blue light out altogether. I'll have to put a post up on how to do that. It's a little bit technical, but you can knock out 100% of the blue light, which is pretty cool.
That's beautiful. Yeah, we use just salt lamps at night. So there's a couple good ones that you could buy like on Amazon, like salt lamp night lights where you just plug it in. There's just a little switch on it. And some of the Himalayan salt, some of them are really dark pink, and so it just barely generates any light, just enough for me to read a book to my daughter at night. So that's kind of a cool strategy. I haven't used like a spectrometer to measure the color frequency or anything like that to see how much blue is still coming through, but it's an incandescent bulb inside of those night lights, and those are like 5 watts or something. So they're pretty low. And same thing as you. That's great. Just trying to minimize not flipping a light switch on to go brush your teeth, not flipping a light switch on to get your bed ready. Just try to live like your ancestors would have done even just 100 years ago. They would have had maybe just a couple lanterns or candles on, and there would have been no option to crank up the bright light. So, women like taking off their makeup at night. If you have to wear makeup, then just try to do it in the dim light. If you miss it, get some extra makeup off in the morning that you missed the night before. It's just not worth sacrificing it, because when you shift that circadian rhythm, it may take you 45 minutes to 2 hours, just based on some of the readings I've done of the hormone laboratories we use. They say you can shift that melatonin production by an hour plus just by that one flash of bright light. It's like, boom, daytime, tricks your brain. Your brain thinks, oh, it's day. Let's make cortisol, not melatonin.
Yeah,
So
what I'll do is I have low blue light night bulbs, and I have them in all the rooms. And so that's one of the big things that I'll use if I'm in the room, kind of brushing teeth or doing anything at night. That light bulb gets flicked on. I'll have it in my son's room if we need. It's going to be off during the night. He doesn't sleep with it on, but if we need to see something and my hands are whatever are full, we use those. So the low blue light night bulbs are phenomenal. I'll try to put a link in the show notes to the ones that I've been using for the last 5 years. They work phenomenal.
Sweet. Yeah. Richard Hansler, he's got that company lowbluelights.com, and
Okay.
Nice dude. And yeah,
Well, that's cool, him. I didn't know that.
yeah, he's like in his 90s. I hope he's still alive. I interviewed him like in 2012 when I first started my podcast. So what's that been, 7 years ago? So he's probably, I don't know, almost 100 years old now, but he was a very nice guy. And, he had so much guilt about working at GE, developing brighter and more blue light bulbs. So now he's like anti-blue. So that was kind of his motivation to work on getting rid of blue at nighttime. He wrote books about, pregnant women and how important it is for pregnant women to pay attention to what we're saying too. Uh, if you're up in the middle of the night nursing a kid, for example, with a new baby, making sure the mom is avoiding blue light as well, because the melatonin goes through the breast milk to the baby. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure infants and young children don't make melatonin maybe as effectively or efficiently as adults, and they depend on some of that breast milk transfer rather than making it on their own.
Yeah, I can just tell you with my previous sons in the past, you just getting extra high quality protein before bed makes a big difference. So we would up, a lot of the high tryptophan rich animal products, and that would make a big difference. That really make a big difference with the sleep component.
That's great.
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of the sleep hormones, right? Melatonin comes from tryptophan, amino acids, and essentially, the more you consume them as the mom, you're going to have a greater chance of passing that through to the baby. So you only can give what you got. So high quality animal protein is going to be the best source to pass down those amino acids that are going to have the precursor building blocks for serotonin, which is going to allow you to feel good, but also serotonin to the precursor to melatonin, which will allow you to sleep well too. And you got to be careful with taking a end stage hormone like melatonin while you're breastfeeding. So you're much better off getting the building blocks. And if you're having a hard time with just getting it from meat, you may want to look at tryptophan on first and then 5-HTP with B6 second, because B6 is a really important cofactor to converting those amino acids upstream and helping them to synthesize into serotonin and melatonin. B6 is that rate limiting nutrient.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't want to have to depend on melatonin. You actually downregulate your body. Justin and I, we give people supplements to help fix issues, and we get a lot of questions like, well, am I going to get dependent on this? For example, like digestive enzymes. People will say, well, is my body going to get lazy and I will not be making enzymes and acids anymore because you all are giving me digestive enzyme supplements? The answer is no, that doesn't happen. You're only feeding the fire and adding to the fire. You're not replacing the fire. Versus with melatonin, that does happen. You do replace the fire and your body will downregulate production. Just like if you use GABA supplements to help yourself sleep, you can become dependent on that. I've seen people taking 10, 20, 30 milligrams of melatonin at night, which is just crazy. You try to get those people off of it, it can be difficult. So we would prefer to let your body make it rather than supplementing. There's this phenomenon where it's like a seesaw. And if you throw too much melatonin in, that can give you that hangover the next morning, partially because your cortisol will not peak as much as it's supposed to. And Justin and I measure that on salivary cortisol panels. We'll measure an average melatonin level, and also we'll look at cortisol. And we'll see people that supplement too much melatonin, their morning spike, let's just make up a number and say their morning cortisol should be 20 units. If they've been doing too much melatonin, their morning spike may be only 10 units. And so now all of a sudden it's the equivalent of you charged your smartphone to 50% battery in the morning and that's it. And now you're going to try to make phone calls all day. It's going to be difficult. So that cortisol, if it's not fully peaking when it should in the morning with that bright light stimulation, now you're going to crash out at noon and your cortisol level will be like a 1 or 2 units, which is what it's supposed to be around midnight. And we measure this, right? This is not something we're just making up. We see this on a piece of paper. We look at these labs. We live and breathe these labs all day, every day. So I can tell you with confidence that just by getting yourself off melatonin, if you're hooked on it, working with somebody like Justin or I to help regulate your hormone levels and circadian rhythm better, that alone is going to pay dividends, and you won't have to depend on coffee. Coffee can be a good part of your day, but it's not going to be like whipping the tired horse like many people do.
Yeah, I mean, coffee is great. I'm sipping on some great coffee right now. Just try to do it before noontime, maybe even before 10, 11 o'clock. That way it's done. It's in your system. Coffee can have a great way to kind of emphasize that cortisol in the morning. We don't want to do more than typically 2 cups or so. And
People
putting
just use it as a crutch, though. That's all I was trying to point out is like people are like,
they'll do it
oh,
in the morning, they'll do it in the afternoon, they'll do it late afternoon. That's probably not the best because then one, it's got a half-life of about 8 to 10 hours. So that means it's going to be in your system at bedtime. So the benefit of doing it in the morning, it's going to be for the most part out of your system and not impeding sleep. So, and also you're not going to be overly stimulating your adrenals throughout the day. Kind of a nice little bump in the morning is okay because I consider coffee a superfood. The alkaloids in it have major anti-aging benefits, but they also can be a little bit stimulating. So once in the morning is fine, but not in the afternoon before nighttime because that overstimulates, and also it will spill into your nighttime and affect sleep and melatonin production. The more your sleep and your rhythm is off, like Evan was saying earlier, a greater chance that you're going to be affected by seasonal affective disorder, SAD, or seasonal depression. So the more we can keep, let's just say, your night rhythm kind of untouched, unencumbered, the better chance that your mood and energy will be the next day.
Let's talk about supplements and labs.
Hmm.
So, lab testing, I have mentioned and alluded to salivary hormone testing. We can also measure melatonin via saliva. We can use urine for looking at cortisol and melatonin as well. But you got to get to the root cause of what the seasonal depression is. So in my case, I was working third shift. Duh, the root cause is third shift. You're trying to work when humans should be sleeping. So, but you and I kind of talked about this before we got on air, which is that I think seasonal depression, after going through it for 10, 15 years of my life, I think seasonal depression is more pronounced when you have other health issues going on. I don't think if you're an optimally healthy person, I don't think you should have seasonal depression. I think it's if your toxin bucket or your stress bucket is already so full and you're already so dysfunctional, that seasonal loss of light affects you way more. Like the past couple years, I felt great. I wasn't depressed. It was weird because I'd have these gray, cloudy, cold days where normally, I just want to curl up in a ball and wrap myself in a blanket. I didn't have those. I was like out hiking in the woods, in a foot of snow with snow boots on, having fun. So exercise is huge for seasonal depression. But my main point here is that I think if you do have seasonal depression, there's probably something going on underlying that you just haven't found yet. So it could be gut infections robbing your nutrition. You mentioned tryptophan and having good animal products in the diet. Well, if you've got gut infections, for example, you're not digesting those animal proteins as well. Now you're not getting that tryptophan. So now you can't manufacture brain chemicals like you should be. So it could be a gut issue leading to the seasonal depression. It could be relationship problems. It could be you're not getting enough bright light because you're stuck in a dark office. It could be lack of exercise. It could be you're just not getting enough fresh air. You've got kind of this cabin fever syndrome going on. So I think you still have to consider other options. And then I'll let you comment on that. And then I do want to mention some supplements that have helped too.
100%. So in general, what you said, kind of the take home here is the healthier you are, the more adaptive. So the things like changing of the seasons, especially as UV light drops and things get colder, is going to affect you less. That's really important. So we have our metaphorical stress bucket, right? And that bucket holds our physical, chemical, and emotional stressors we may dump into it. So we could probably look at the season changing maybe as a chemical stressor, maybe less UV light. There also could be some emotional stressors because maybe you can't jump in your pool or do the fun things you used to do when it was warmer. So maybe there's a chemical component there because of the light, and maybe there's an emotional component because you're missing activities or you're cooped up inside, right? So those are kind of some stressors we put into our stress bucket right there. The healthier we are and the more those buckets or those balls in our buckets are managed, well, we can adapt. That's number one. Okay. And number two, on top of that, you highlighted various stressors. Well, let me just go back. One big component, one big nutritional component are going to be healthy nutrients. Now, one big nutrient that's important for brain health and neurological health, I saw a study on this the other day looking at like vegans versus meat eaters, and they're talking about one important nutrient that it's underrated, but it's really important for brain and neurological health. It's choline. And choline is primarily going to be found in abundance in egg yolks, in grass-fed beef, high quality animal products, maybe even in some full fat dairy. So choline is vital for healthy neurological brain formation, healthy neurological health in general. So choline is vital, and people who are plant-based or vegan or vegetarian are not going to be getting enough of this nutrient. So if you are vegan or vegetarian, you may want to look at a phosphorylated choline or phosphatidylcholine, some extra choline support in your diet to supplement what you may not be getting from some of these animal products. That actually push you to start eating maybe at least some egg yolks, something like that, to get that good choline. That's really important. And then, of course, We already talked about all of the amino acids, which are vital because those amino acids are going to convert downstream into serotonin and melatonin. And those are going to be primarily found in animal-based sources as well. You can also do supplemental tryptophan and or 5-HTP with B6 on top of that. And like Evan said, if this is kind of a longer term pattern with your health, we will look at gut function to make sure there's not an absorption component or a digestive component. And we will look at kind of how your nutrients look. We may run certain panels that will run plasma based amino acids. So we can see how all your amino acids look and how all your downstream B vitamins look in the Krebs cycle of mitochondria to see how they're functioning well. That way we can get to the root cause while at the same time we can spot treat some of these nutrients so you can feel better faster too.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say is sometimes we, even in a meat eater, we may need to come in and give supplemental acids and enzymes, but also throwing in specific amino acids. Now, I caution people to go and just buy a bunch of amino acids and start playing with them because amino acids, even though they're over the counter, they can be very powerful. And you don't want to come in and just, I heard 5-HTP is good, so I'm going to just take a ton of 5-HTP. You don't necessarily want to do that because with this spider web of brain chemistry, when you start to throw in one thing, you can throw something else off. So for example, I've seen long-term 5-HTP supplementation depleting or downregulating dopamine. So if you're throwing in tryptophan or 5-HTP, we may need to throw in a little bit of tyrosine or D-L-phenylalanine to kind of balance that out to where we're bringing up not only the stimulating neurotransmitters, but also kind of your serotonin feel-good neurotransmitters. And if people just go one or the other, maybe short-term, okay, but I've seen people make themselves quote dependent on 5-HTP. I had one lady who was like a yoga teacher and she took 5-HTP for like 5 years, like 500 milligrams a day, which is way too much. And she tried to get off of it and she had major panic attacks trying to get off of it. And so we then had to come in and try to use GABA and theanine and passion flower and other things to help her nervous system because she had really messed up her neurotransmitter balance.
Well, a lot of people that are using 5-HTP chronically, especially if they have chronic stress, they may have issues with dopamine and adrenaline. And the problem with doing 5-HTP by itself is you're upregulating the aromatic decarboxylase enzymes. Those are the same enzymes that are going to metabolize dopamine and adrenaline based amino acids. So then you could actually functionally create a deficiency because as you're taking 5-HTP over here, that enzyme is now upregulated and you're metabolizing dopamine and adrenaline amino acids at a higher rate. The difference is you're dumping this in at a higher rate, but not this. Therefore, over time, this will start to drop. That's part of the reason why, like with carbidopa or with Cinemet, with Parkinson patients that are on this higher dose of dopamine, they start having side effects of low serotonin because those medications actually deplete serotonin. You can have it in a functional type of way on the reverse side. When you do a whole bunch of serotonin, you can kind of create deficiencies on the dopamine adrenaline side. So it's important that you're working with a practitioner that supports all the other nutrients, supports the other side of the teeter-totter, so to speak, and even does some deeper testing, whether it's organic acids or plasma-based amino acid testing to look at what your levels are at.
Yeah, and I'm glad we can look at it. You made great points about the drug. So we don't want to create fear, but we also just want to educate people. Yeah, amino acids can change your life, but they can also make you feel terrible if you mess yourself up. So I would advise you, like I said, reach out to somebody like Justin or me to get help with this, because if you don't test, you've guessed. And so you don't want to say, oh, I feel depressed, I need 5-HTP. Maybe, but maybe not. We've seen tons of people that have depression and it's a dopamine based depression, not a serotonin based depression. See, like if you're like a person who just watches mainstream TV, you're going to be convinced serotonin is the happy chemical. Kind of, but dopamine depletion, if you see low dopamine, that'll make you feel depressed too. So you may be like in the totally wrong department trying to self-medicate. So you really got to get the data. And that's what we love. We love and breathe these labs because it makes us look better, for one, because it's like, hey, we actually found the problem rather than guessing. We found it. We gave you the correct protocol to fix it. We retested. Now look, your brain chemistry feels great. You look great. Your mood's great. Everything's great. Okay, look at the piece of paper. We can prove it. So I like the data. I like to leverage the information as opposed to nothing against naturopaths, but I've had many people come to me and also come to Justin that have previously been with a naturopathic doctor, where it's more of a symptom supplement treatment option as opposed to a symptom lab and then a protocol option, where it's like, oh, I don't feel good, try this. And there wasn't really enough emphasis on getting the correct clinical information, getting the puzzle pieces.
Yeah, so when I look at symptoms, I look at symptoms just long enough to trace them upstream to the systems. Body system, whether it's digestion, infections, hormones, adrenals, thyroid, female hormones. When these systems start going off, symptoms happen. So I only care about the symptoms just long enough so I can start to isolate what the systems could be. And then we'll run tests to assess the function of those systems. But then we'll also look on this side of the underlying stressors that cause these systems to go out of balance. It could be gluten sensitivity, it could be mold exposure, it could be poor sleep, it could be dehydration, it could be not enough protein, not enough hydrochloric acid. So, we have stressors over here, physical, chemical, emotional, that then emanate system imbalance, right? Hormones, gut, detox, mitochondria, that then cause symptom issues over here. So most people live here, and it's drug, nutrient to treat the symptoms, which may be okay, as long as you don't forget about the systems and the underlying stressors that got us here to begin with. So that's kind of the model that I've created over the last decade, seeing thousands of patients. One, it's great for patient education. Or number two, it keeps you focused on, all right, what's the root cause, and then let's say what systems need to restart, because sometimes some of these stressors over here that were around here when everything started may not be even active now. Let's just say, hey, let's just say someone had a leak in their house, had a whole bunch of mold exposure. Well, now they got their house all cleaned up. The leak is fixed, right? They changed the environment in their house, but they still have all these symptoms, right? Underlying stressor is maybe fine, but the systems are still dysfunctional. And of course, the symptoms are now going crazy. So we have to look at it like that. Sometimes these stressors may not even be an issue anymore. A lot of times there still are some, but sometimes they may not even be there.
Yeah, well said. And glad you brought up mold. I mean, I've seen countless mycotoxin tests lately where people have tons of mold in their body and they say, oh, yeah, I was in a moldy house like 5 years ago. We do the plate testing. We confirm their current environment's okay, but the body holds the score. The body still has the mycotoxin load, which can be a huge trigger of depression and anxiety and poor sleep. I don't know the mechanism, but I do know that mold suppresses melatonin. How do I know? Well, because when I do binders, my sleep is way better, way deeper when I'm on binders. So there's probably a nervous system component, the mycotoxins doing something to adrenals to help bump up cortisol and stress hormone, and then that down regulates melatonin. Because when I take binders before bed, man, my sleep quality is way better. Let's go into supplements. So if you want to comment on that, but I do want to talk about like things that you could use besides amino acids to boost yourself up if you're trying to work through this issue.
So, of course, you can do things that are going to be naturally kind of tranquilizing and relaxing. So, GABA, L-theanine, magnesium, excellent, excellent, excellent. Things like ashwagandha and rhodiola, because one, they're going to help with the circadian rhythm. They're going to just help you adapt to stress better anyway, right? These herbs have been studied. Russia in the 50s and 60s used lots of adaptogens for a long time with their military and with their version of NASA with their astronauts doing all these space missions to help improve immune function, virility, stamina. And so there's a lot of research in Russia on these things. These herbs are very helpful and they can be used longer term too. And they help with the immune function. They help with dealing with stress. They help with sleep. They help with mood. So really good benefit. So I like those types of herbs. Ashwagandha and rhodiola are my favorite for mood stuff.
Me too.
Ashwagandha great for sleep too. So I like that. You can also do ginseng during the day, Schisandra. Eleuthero is great for sex hormone support. There's other herbs like tribulus, which are really good for male sex hormones. There are some ones that I use more for females, like maca or Peruvian ginseng. So those are excellent. Talked about magnesium, of course, the amino acids, right? And we may do some testing for that, but that could be 5-HTP with B6. That could be the tyrosine support or DL phenylalanine. Those can be excellent. Let me just think here. I talked about theanine can be excellent for GABA precursor. And then, of course, you have herbs like valerian root, passion flower, which can be very relaxing and supportive. Hops. Some people do very good with CBD as well. CBD can be excellent on top of that. Anything else that comes to mind for you, Evan?
Yeah, so rhodiola during the day, but don't do it at night. Rhodiola will be too stimulating at night. It's a super effective antidepressant too, which is why I love it. I'm in the same boat as you. It's one of my top favorites. Holy basil is another big favorite of mine.
Great.
I notice differences. You know, I used to take a lot of adaptogenic herbs in a compound, like 5, 6 different adaptogens together, but I've started to play with isolated, like a shot of rhodiola, a shot of eleuthero, a shot of ashwagandha, a shot of holy basil to see how I feel. And I've noticed with holy basil, I get a much, much more physical boost. Rhodiola to me can be helpful for physical endurance, but I feel holy basil is even better. I almost feel invincible when I'm on a couple shots of holy basil. It's just this really, really like powerful feeling that can overwhelm you. Maybe I'm just different, but for me, holy basil is great. I'll mix them. So I'll do a shot of rhodiola in the morning, a shot of ashwagandha, take a couple reishi capsules, and then do 1 to 2 of some other like Siberian ginseng, a shot or two of those, and then mix them all together in tincture form. Once I know how I feel individually, then I may bump up something more. So I may do 2 parts rhodiola, 1 part holy basil, 1 part eleuthero. And then you already hit on it a bit, but like the B vitamins in general. So B is in Bravo, you know, B6, B12, even like riboflavin, for example, niacin, B1. I mean, all these are still important. So just a good complex would be a good idea. And if you're under stress, you're going to be burning up B vitamins more. So it wouldn't hurt to have an adaptogen blend plus a good trace mineral, micronutrient, amino acid, and vitamin blend all together. And then uh, exercise, movement. I mean, it's free and it can be very effective.
Love it. Now let's talk about some light therapy. I know you talked about full spectrum light as well. We had some questions on the chats here about red light therapy. And so there's a company out there, Juve. Juve Red Light is a good one. What's your thoughts on red light versus full spectrum? How do you break that down in your head?
Yeah, so full spectrum, when I hear that, I'm thinking more of like a full spectrum sauna that may have a near infrared light in it, which is kind of like a red chicken coop type bulb that's warm, but also can generate some near infrared rays to help penetrate your body, plus a full spectrum, like carbon based system that's heating your body. So when I think full spectrum, that's what I think of. You could consider incandescent light bulbs to be more full spectrum. If you look at a spectrometer, this basically the rainbow of colors. You look at the sunlight, it's got the full rainbow of colors. You look at incandescent bulbs are the closest you can get to the sun, whereas LED lights have a lot of abnormal peaks, especially in the blue area. So LED is not really a natural light. It doesn't mimic the sun anywhere close to like what I would consider full spectrum. Really just a marketing term. Like if you go to like a pet store, you know, they'll sell like full spectrum light bulbs for reptiles. You know, if you buy a lizard, you have to have like a full spectrum light to kind of replicate the sunlight. So those full spectrum bulbs, they're really just incandescents. They may have a couple changes in the wavelength, but overall, it's just a glorified incandescent bulb. So when we moved into this new house, we actually had LEDs. Previous owner put in LEDs everywhere, and the flicker of them is really bad. Like if you do your hand in front of your face, the flicker of the LED is evident, and that'll cause stress too. So we swapped them all out. We put in all incandescents, and yes, it uses a little more electricity, but I love the look and the natural spectrum that you can get from incandescent bulbs.
Got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
I didn't answer the question about the red light though. So the red light,
Mhm.
I have seen the Juve. The Juve people reached out to me and said, "Hey, we want to sponsor your podcast and all that." And I just didn't like the idea of the LEDs because the red light bulb that I used from Sauna Space, I felt much better with because it's like this chicken coop bulb. It's very hot, but I felt really good. It warmed you up. Whereas the Juve, I don't believe is designed for warming. It's more of just, hey, let's blast your body with red light, which is supposed to be healing. I like the feeling of it feels like a sunshine. When you close your eyes and you're sitting in front of that near infrared bulb and it's blasting you, it feels very, very good. So that's kind of my preference over the Juve right now.
Is that the sauna space? Is that the big 250-watt near infrared light?
Exactly. Yep. Yep. So
Okay.
it's a single bulb. And you could, I mean, if you're on a budget, you could even just go on Amazon, the GE brand, just like what people buy to put to keep their animals warm in the winter. It's a 250-watt GE bulb that's red. That is almost the same exact thing, as far as I know, in terms of the sauna space bulb. So if you're like, I can't justify the money, you could get you a light bulb for 20 bucks. You get one of these little like aluminum, uh, it's like a bulb holder with a plug on it, and you plug that bad boy in, you're looking at less than 50 bucks. So
Got it. And then the near infrared, that's going to be a near infrared. So
yeah,
the wavelength on that from a nanometer perspective, I think near it's somewhere between 600 to 1,000 nanometers. And I think the red light bulb with sauna space is right around 850. And so that's going to be helpful for what? It's going to help supercharge the mitochondria at that frequency. It's going to help with seasonal affective disorder because it's going to help stimulate serotonin production. What other
yeah.
benefits are happening with that wavelength? And then how does that differ than like a far infrared, or like, let's say someone that has, like, I have a combo infrared sauna via sunlight. And how would that be different than that?
Yeah. So for me, and I don't know, I'm sure there's some data on this to prove it, but for me, I noticed a reduction in pain using the near infrared. So, if I had like sore elbows from lifting too much heavy weights, I would just put the near infrared bulb on my elbow, kind of spot treat with it. If I had neck pain, I would just put it on my neck for 5 minutes. If I even had stomach pain, like I got food poisoning or something, I put that near infrared bulb on my tummy. And you could use it for children too. If you have kids with an upset tummy, you could put the red light bulb on them for 30 seconds. Dr. Lawrence Wilson, he's the guy who really brought near infrared therapy into the forefront. He wrote a whole book on near infrared sauna therapy, and he talks about hundreds and hundreds of different uses and benefits of near infrared. So I would look up his articles, and he's got a whole book on it that you can learn.
And then are you actually putting that light bulb right against your skin?
No, it's way too hot. You'd
Yeah.
burn the crap out of yourself. No, you put it like
Mm-hmm.
maybe 8 to 12 inches away. I
Got
mean,
it.
it's so hot. So, yeah, like a foot away is plenty. But Lawrence Wilson, he's the guy who really probably started the whole near infrared sauna industry. I mean, he literally, to me, was like kind of the forefather of putting this information out. And he has all these like, what do you call them? Not recipes, these online books of how to make and design your own near infrared little cubicle, basically.
Yeah. And from what I understand is there's two types of the near infrared. There's the halogen based one, which I think is the one you were referring to with the light. And then there's the LED emitted one. So I think Juve is more of an LED emitted near infrared. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah. And for what I understand is the nanometer wavelengths a little bit more in the sweet spot with the LED. So it seems like
Supposedly.
850, 880 versus I think 1200 or so with the incandescent. But I think, hey, it's worth trying the cheaper method first, see if you feel a benefit, and then you can always switch to a LED version of that wavelength and see how it goes.
Yeah, there's a whole article that Brian Richards did. He's the head of the sauna space company. He did this whole article, like coming up with all these different reasons of why he doesn't like the Juve and why he doesn't recommend it. So I don't have all the details now to bring it up, but I'll at least point people to that article, because I actually spoke with him about that. I said, man, Juve is promoting themselves like they're so awesome. But I spoke with Jack Cruz, and he was like, I'm not a fan of the LEDs for this and this and this reason. And I felt personally better while using the near infrared halogen on myself. It warmed me up. So I like that. But Brian had a good article on it. So maybe people can check that out if they want to dig into the debate more. I mean, here's the deal. Is any red light better than no red light? Yeah, probably. But, there's always going to be pros and cons to each system that you choose.
Absolutely. And what about like the sunlight and sauna that's going to have a combination of near and far?
That's the best. That's the best you can do. So I've got a clear light, kind of a similar competitor to the sunlighting. So like in the clear light in the front, what I have, it's like, it looks like a big thermometer. Basically, it's like this big
Yep.
red glass tube that glows hot red. That's your near infrared spectrum. And then the walls are what have the far infrared waves. It's best to have both, because the near infrared really warms you up. The far infrared kind of penetrates. Supposedly near infrared penetrates farther than far infrared. It gets confusing with the wavelengths, but I will just tell you,
Yeah.
if you can have both near and far, that's what I feel best in. And I know because I had just a far infrared sauna before, and it did not feel nearly as good compared to the system I have now, which is a combination like yours, where it's a near infrared hot red bulbs and the hot system in the wall.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at this interview with Dr. Michael Hamblin. He talks about that the near infrared don't penetrate the body as deep, only about 10% on the outer kind of surface. And it's the far infrared that penetrate deeper. So that
Okay.
makes sense. That
So
makes
see,
sense.
it's confusing. I would just say get both if you can, because I remember seeing a Mercola interview. I think Brian Richards may have done it, or may have been somebody else on saunas, and they said far infrared is just a term, but the wavelength can't penetrate as deep, so near penetrates deeper. I don't know. I don't want to confuse people, but I would just say if you have access and the ability to do near and far combo, that's what I do, and that's what you do, and we feel good with it.
Yeah, I'll put some of the articles that I have here in the show notes. So under references, so people can go look at it and just kind of see some of the things that we're looking at to make our best guesses off of. So that's great. All
Cool.
right, so that's good. So we have kind of the cheaper option where we do like a sauna space, incandescent light bulb at that mid 800 nanometer wavelength, and then we have some of the LED Juve light options, as well as a full spectrum near and far infrared, which would be like for instance, like a sunlight and sauna, or what was the brand that you had?
It's a clear light.
Clear Light. Okay, great. And I think I affiliate for Sunlighten as well. I like their sauna. I have it in my home office. I think it works great. So if anyone is interested, we'll put notes about how to get a discount on that below as well. And same thing for you. Is there anything else you want to highlight about using various light therapies to improve seasonal affective disorder?
I think we covered it. It works. It's a good strategy. It should definitely be in your toolbox, but make sure you're trying to work day shift and not do night shift if at all possible, and get your hormones working right, get your gut working right, get your mitochondria supported, and you should be able to thrive during winter when there's not as much sunlight.
Excellent. Very good. Let me just hit a couple of questions for listeners. How much melatonin before bed if you're going to do it? Typically, try to do 5-HTP and B6 first. Anywhere between 100 to 400 milligrams is fine with that. Maybe divide it in 2 doses at dinner and before bed is fine. And then melatonin, I typically start off at half of a milligram, and then work up from there. Try to get the lowest possible dose to have the greatest effect possible on that. A couple other questions. I think we hit it. I think I'm sensitive to caffeine more than average. I think it takes me 8 to 10 hours, maybe 12 to 24 to metabolize coffee, just to guess. But even 1 cup isn't safe for me. Yep. So if you're a slow coffee or caffeine metabolizer, that's the CYP SNP. You may just want to just do decaf coffee, which only has 5 milligrams per cup versus the typical 100. That would give you a 95% reduction. So start with that, see how you do.
Or matcha. You could do some good
Matcha.
organic ceremonial grade matcha. You'll get like maybe 30, 40 milligrams per cup. You should probably be fine with that.
Yep. Does taking magnesium bring down vitamin D? Not sure about that. Not sure.
I've never heard that.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Have you ever tried to use the relax sauna?
No, I haven't.
I have not. I have not. I think we hit all the major questions, guys. Anything else, Evan, you want to highlight?
I don't think so. If people want to reach out, we help people with this issue every single day. So you can do at Justin's website. His website is justinhealth.com, and you could reach out. He works with clients worldwide. My website is evanbrand.com. We look forward to being on your team. We love helping people fix these issues, and the things we've talked about today are far more effective and far safer than going on a depression medication because you feel depressed in the winter. It's not a deficiency of pharmaceutical drugs, folks. It is something else. So you got to make sure that you're addressing everything else.
100%. And we're going to have a great link for the podcast down below. So if you want to listen to the higher quality audio version, we're going to have that as well. And then references, resources down below as well. And make sure you subscribe to both our channels. And we appreciate you guys giving us a comment or a feedback. justinhealth.com/iTunes for a great review. And same thing, evanbrand.com/iTunes for a review there. We really appreciate it, guys. I'll be back in a few minutes here for a live Q&A with me. So if you are listening, feel free, hold tight. I'll put a reminder out for y'all and we will be in touch. Evan, it was great chatting, man. You have an awesome day.
Take care. You too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.